This is the Global Digest. We are a think tank group and we talk with a lot of VIP people from around the world. Why don't you introduce briefly to our audience? Where are you based now and what is your background? Please, Musona.
Thank you very much. My name, as you have said, is Mambo Ignatius Musona. I am a mayor development practitioner working for local CSOs and then working for the UN, the mission in South Sudan. Basically, I would say my areas of interest include natural resources governance, peace building, the nexus between peace building and natural resources governance or natural resources exploitation, and also protection of civilians, livelihoods to some extent, and climate adaptation. I think basically that's what I do.
I saw you mention about civil affairs officer at United Nations.
Yes.
So
yes.
There are many departments in United Nations. What civil affairs exactly doing in United Nations?
Civil affairs is the civilian department of the United Nations peacekeeping mission. It is the department that is made up of civil people or ordinary citizens who promote peace through engagement and through dialogue, promoting local level peace meetings, not peacekeeping. Peacekeeping is mainly done by the military, but civil affairs is involved in engaging local leadership, warring parties, bring them together to dialogue without coercion, without the use of force, without the use of weapons. So they are the bridge between the government, the military, and the warring parties. We act as the buffer, as the link between the two warring groups, but mainly in a civilian form.
Kind of diplomacy.
Yes, yes.
It's involved military, it will be arms conflicts, but now you are just doing diplomacy.
After serving for about 4 years in South Sudan, so I'm just home. What I have not done is to change my designation to say civil affairs, because that is what I've been doing up to the end of November last year. But otherwise, I'm home. I'm no longer doing any UN work. I was doing this in South Sudan.
What is problem in South Sudan? Because they already independent from Sudan, and they have a government, and so mainly, what is the problem? How do you see?
There are so many challenges in South Sudan. To start with, there is what we call ethnic violence, primarily because of the government is viewed as belonging to a certain ethnic group, and of course, this is the majority ethnic group. The other minority ethnic groups, who are about 3 or 4, don't really recognize the current government. So this is, and also to make matters worse, North Sudan has been supplying weapons to those minority groups to destabilize the government. So, although they got the independence, South Sudan is under serious ethnic clashes. Daily they are fighting. And it's very interesting to note or to tell you that in South Sudan, people own guns like they own shoes. Wherever you move around, you find people carrying guns. Civilian people, not the military.
You mean everybody in South Sudan, they have a gun?
Yeah, every males mainly.
So it's easily armed conflict can happen in South Sudan.
So if there is any misunderstanding or altercation, yeah, they just use the weapons. And there is what we call revenge killing in South Sudan, where if if I kill you, or if one kills one person, then the brothers of that person will kill the other brothers of those. I mean, it becomes a cycle of violence. Yeah, revenge killing.
Revenge each other. So it's a terrible, and it's still conflict is increasing or is still not reducing because it's been. I think your UN is working for a long time, right? When did your mission, civil affairs office was started? Since independence?
Well, independence was in 2005 and war broke out in 2007. So the UN moved to South Sudan around 2010 and they had been there. But ethnic conflicts continue to be happening throughout the countryside.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's still increasing violence or is reduced after 2010 and compared to today?
Well, yeah, they are trying to sort of contain the violence, but as you know, like I said, the the appetite to use arms is very high because people have got guns. So, and again, to make matters worse, there are no industries. So what it means is the majority of the youths are not working, and therefore they are now using those guns as a means of livelihood, where they'll either go and raid vehicles, they'll either mug, or they'll either go and just commit banditry using the guns. So it has now moved from being an ethnic reason for conflict to being a livelihood reason for the use of guns.
It's vulnerable for armed conflicts because everybody easily to use arms and everybody possess arms. So it is vulnerable for armed conflict and it's become common conflict in South Sudan.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
UN did not play a role for arms controlling in South Sudan.
Well, there are lots of disarmament programs that are happening there, but the rate is very slow. Or sometimes people, well, in a family of say 5, where the 3 are males, maybe 1 or 2 hand over the gun and then they'll keep 1 because there's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of mistrust among the villagers, such that they cannot hand over all their guns. As part of civil affairs, one of the responsibilities was to engage the local leadership, engage the traditional leadership, the chiefs and the warlords, to encourage their people to hand over the guns. But like I'm saying, it's now a sort of like a means of survival. It's very interesting if I tell you that in South Sudan, when you want to marry, they will charge you cows and a gun and rounds of ammunition.
The ruling party and opposition party, they formed coalition government, he and Macha. So the situation doesn't improve. Even 2 of them are united and leading the government.
Well, I think at the highest level, at the government, there is some bit of consensus. But as you trickle down to subnational levels, there is a lot of suspicion and a lot of mistrust. And you find the president, Salva Kiir, may not travel to the Marshall's dominated areas or areas of, and vice versa. So, yeah, it is still there is still a lot of mistrust among even the 2 of them and all their followers. They don't trust each other.
I see. So they never you know, properly um, combined to the grassroots level, right? So they have their own group and their own party separately. They still exist separately in the country. They have their armed force separately, and they live separately, and not each leader did not visit to the opposition camp or opposition base and vice versa. So which means the the collaboration or combination of the two groups or multiple groups are not going well at the grassroots level, soldier to soldier, or captain to captain. They never, even I guess, they never meeting each other. Probably the low rank officer will be never meet each other, and they always, I don't know, it will be also related on the propaganda in each camp, opposition camp or the ruling camp or any other ethnic group camp. If they have very anti-ethnic group or hate speech, hate crime to the other group, it will be very difficult for improve unity among different groups. So how did you see? Is there any, propaganda in each ethnic group? They are strongly propaganda each other. Have you ever meet them local level from each party?
Yeah, the role of the UN, especially the Civil Affairs Department and the Political Affairs Department, is primarily to promote peace, promote civic engagement among the warring groups or among the various ethnic groups. Let me not say warring, but ethnic groups. The need for them to coexist, the need for them to, to, to tolerate each other. Like I said, there's also the influence of culture. The culture of South Sudan is such that they value cattle so much so that annually they have periods where one ethnic group will go and raid another ethnic group. And during this raid, this is where they use arms, because even those that are looking after the cattle, they will be armed. So during these times of raiding, they will go and fight and get cattle. The reason being that in South Sudan, when paying dowry for marriage, you need about 70 to 100 cows. So for you to marry, when you get to a certain age, you just have to go and raid cattle or to fight for cattle. So these are so sporadic. They happen time and again. You bring people together today, they talk about it, and then in a month's time, a certain group of young men wants to marry. They have to go and raid because the dowry, the number of cows that are required for dowry is just unbelievable high. 70, 80 to marry one wife. And also, they also do a bit of child abduction, where they abduct young boys and even young girls for conscription into the army or into their ranks and become and defend the certain ethnic group in the future. So there is also, besides cattle raiding and other banditry things, their culture also is about abducting each other, and that is very right. And again, all these cause a lot of tension and mistrust, because you can get to a certain group and you can notice that these people, or for example, I will give an example in your case, where if I were to come to South Korea, probably I will be able to see that this person is from Malaysia, is not really South Korean, or this person is from China. So that's what happens. You find there are so many children who have been abducted and they've been assimilated in a certain ethnic group, and there is always this desire from one group to go and get their children from that other end, and so the fighting continues.
So this
But
kind of abduction is against human rights, right? Like
yeah, it's against human rights. Yes,
violation of human rights and
yes, violation of
crime against humanity, and also abduction or strong, ethnic violence each other. It can also, violence. Any kind of violence is crimes against humanity. Maybe both parties may committed human rights violation and crime against humanity. So how your UN office strategy to make coexist among different ethnic groups in South Sudan? What strategy and what plan? So far, you've been there for 4 years, so there should be a good strategy, a very strong strategy in this kind of very highly tension, highly ethnic conflict country. You need very strategy or many kind of methods to solve. You cannot simply go and just a traditional way of office work may not be a success. Maybe you need some kind of a new idea. Is there any strategy by UN office or your own opinion?
The UN is using various strategies.
Right.
One which starts at the national level, where the UN has been encouraging the leadership of the various groups to dialogue, to talk, and ask them to go and actually speak to their people at the grassroots, supporting or funding these community awareness. The UN has also been using other UN agencies like OCHA, like World Food Program, like UNICEF, to provide other humanitarian activities. But during these humanitarian activities, bring in civil affairs to talk about peace, bring in civil affairs to talk about coexistence and all other forms of state building. The UN has been using the African Union to engage, because you find there are some people in South Sudan who are also found in Ethiopia. There are South Sudanese who are also found in Uganda. There are South Sudanese who are also found in DRC. There are South Sudanese who are also found in Sudan, Arab Sudan. So you find those who are outside South Sudan have always been supporting their relatives who are in Sudan in terms of provision of arms and in terms of course, moral support in whatever form. So there has been a concerted effort to use the IGAD, East African group of nations, to ensure that their borders are not as porous, to allow the trafficking or the movement of weapons into South Sudan, and also to ensure that the peace agreement that was signed in 2013 is adhered to all the provisions of the peace agreement, that is the demobilization, because each of the ethnic groups has been having standing armies outside the control of the government. So the peace agreement is actually explicit that there is need for the demobilization of the soldiers, there is need for the rehabilitation, disarmament, and demobilization, and the government take up all those arms. So there are various strategies that are being used. Some of the strategies, for example, UNDP has been developing roads and other infrastructure, because in some areas there are no roads. The UN has to use helicopters to go there. And these people, there is not even network. You can't even be talking like we are doing today in some parts of South Sudan. They are so underdeveloped to such an extent that it becomes very difficult to influence those people or to talk to those people because you can't reach them. So all what they know is to fight. So there has been a lot of efforts in terms of developing infrastructure so that the government and the sub-national government are able to reach to those people so that these people can get formal employment and divert their energy from cattle raiding or from fighting so that they get employed. So there are an array of strategies that are being used currently in South Sudan.
So UN has a lot more to do in South Sudan, I guess.
Yes. No, but it's doing a lot. It's doing a lot. It's doing a lot, and there's a lot of impact
because it's not going to peace anytime soon or not become the end of conflict any soon in South Sudan because, as you mentioned, culturally or ethnic wise, there is very strong, feeling and violent each other. That will not go any soon. So UN still have to do a lot more in South Sudan, I guess. The strategy, UN also not much able to convince, even they violated their own peace signature by each party. So it's very difficult if they don't want to implement and violate their own signature. No commitment, right? No political will. That is very difficult. And UN has I guess, it's also headache full and you have to do more job. And what about religious role? Is South Sudan a Christian or Roman Catholic? The religious leader from both sides cannot, convince them to stop violence and to make coexist among ethnic groups. Is there any role religious leader or religious churches can do? What is majority in South Sudan? What religion?
South Sudan is Christian dominated, although the northern part of South Sudan, closer to Sudan, it's more Islamic or Arabic. They speak Arabic and they are Islamists. And as you are aware, there is an element of some tension between Christians and Islamists. But however, of course, the churches, the Christians, mainly the Roman Catholic is more dominant. Of course, they always talk about, they do talk about peace, but of course, their influence is limited to urban areas because in some of the rural areas, they are not there because of inaccessibility, and also because, I mean, it's just very risky, even because some areas there are no roads, so even building a church has been very difficult. Infrastructure is not there. But in the urban setup, I think, yes, the church definitely has been playing a very important role in terms of talking and spreading and encouraging peace or peaceful coexistence.
If they lost their faith and they are absent attending the church, it will be far away from Christian belief, or some probably not at all. Pay attention for the church and worship, and and they don't aware about religion, it will be also difficult to convince. As long as there is no spirit, no spiritual life, people will not want to listen any peace or any negotiation. They only want to fight. Church role, the religious leader role are not much, very weak religious. As UN representative, mostly you stay in the capital Juba, or you can able to access any countryside.
The UN has got camps throughout South Sudan, and we were living in a camp in a state called Jonglei, some 200 kilometers away from Juba. And the mode of transport to get to Juba was air because there is no road. So yeah, the UN has set up camps so that at least they live with so that they influence the people, they live with the local people where most of the violence, where most of the problems are. Yeah.
So usually you can access only UN camp, something like that related to UN program. You cannot go privately to other villages or seeing different local situation or different ethnic group. You can able to access or you cannot access.
No, I mean, the UN would use all possible means to reach out to even inaccessible areas because the helicopter can land where there is level ground and even where there is grass. The UN used to go in some very remote areas where people have never seen a vehicle. The UN will go there and try to influence and talk to people about peace and also provide humanitarian assistance.
Peaceful coexistence and, to come forward for negotiation and to make peace in South Sudan. What's your suggestion, your recommendation?
I think the efforts that are being done to bring together the leadership to ensure that the leadership will continue talking, dialoguing, and also I believe the other way is to ensure that there is education in the very remote areas. Because once people get educated, then the appetite to fight is somehow reduced because then people look for formal employment, people look for scholarships to go and study, and they actually enjoy the globalization where they can actually move out of South Sudan, go to Kenya, look for jobs and the like. So I think there is need to expand education facilities to some of these remote areas, expand medical facilities, and even bring in a lot of semi-skilled people to these underdeveloped areas.